States Army.
And what was your rank?
The highest rank I held was a sergeant, but I gave that up to go to the Army Specialized Training Program, which was pre-engineering. And like your father in the V-12, this is a comparable thing he did. I spent, after leaving the unit in Fort Dix in August of 1943, I spent 7.5 months at CCNY and Brooklyn College in the Army Specialized Training Program, pre-engineering, just
right.
like a fact. They shut it down in March of 1944 because they anticipated needing replacements for the upcoming D-Day. And at that time they closed that program out and they put 200,000 more soldiers back in the infantry. They also closed out the pre-flight training for the Air Force, and they shipped them back in. And that was comical.
Really?
Well, they had a pretty soft life for pre-flight training, and they came into the outfit in June of 1945, and of course they come in with their crushed hats and almost a different uniform, but one of the things they brought their pajamas, and it was a riot on that. But they were melted in and ended up in filling out these infantry divisions had been stripped earlier for replacements for outfits that were going in on D-Day.
Now, were you drafted or did you enlist?
No, I was drafted. Yeah.
And where were you living at the time you were drafted?
Weymouth, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is outside of Boston?
Yeah, it's a suburb of Boston. Yeah.
And did you get to pick which branch of the service you served in, or did they pick for you?
No, they picked for me. Yeah.
So you went right into the Army.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah.
Do you have any good or bad recollections of the first days that you were serving in the Army when you went through?
I remember vividly living in Weymouth, and we were told to individually, went down by myself to get the train station at Weymouth to go into Boston, South Station. And we were met there by a sergeant, and he picked up the other people coming in. And we went outside on Atlantic Avenue, and they put us in a 6x6 Army truck and took us to Commonwealth Armory for a final physical. And then we were shipped up to Fort Devens to start the process of collecting. And so I left at 7 o'clock, my home, got a train pretty close to a little after 7. And we kept going, and we quit about 1:30 in the morning up to Fort Devens with the orientation. Collecting clothes,
right.
Duffel bag, doing this, doing shots, doing this. And then the orientation in the theater up there for the Army period, yeah. And I think we were there 3 days, and I shipped down south to a training facility, and we went through basic training. I think we were the last ones to do 17 weeks and finished in April. And April, I was very fortunate. I make the joke that I missed the boat twice, and this was one of the times I did. I applied. They had a notice on the bulletin board. I saw a lot of opportunities in the Army. I said, geez, this place can be very well, a lot of opportunity. But anyway, I applied for notice on the bulletin board, the company bulletin board. If you're interested in being interviewed for OCS, report such and such to the regimental a day room on such and such a time and date, Class A uniforms. So I had to get permission from the company commander to do it, and I went up there, and that result, I was accepted. Here's the critical part. That entire, well, there were 27 people selected from the regiment, and the average age was 24. Now, the rest of the, now what they did was if you were selected, you stayed back as cadre to help train the incoming recruits, you know, the draftees that were coming in. And you stayed there in the camp. You had no rank, but designated rank, and you waited until OCS opened up, and then you went to the class graduated, you went in there. But here's the point where I missed the boat. The entire regiment was shipped down to Indian Town Gap to be shipped immediately out of Philadelphia to England. And now this is 44, to take their unit training in England. And I stayed back, waiting for the recruits to come in. I stayed in there about 3 weeks. Now what happened is there was a need, and this is the Army, I don't know who did it or what. They needed 2 people with special designation, which we really didn't have, to join a unit at Fort Dix, New York. And a fellow from Estonia and myself were the 2 youngest. We were 19, and we were the 2 candidates that were sent up there. So I didn't go overseas immediately, but I was sent up to Fort Dix. I stayed at Fort Dix, and very quickly got a corporal's ranking and a sergeant's ranking, and really a drill sergeant with field duties and the whole bit, hikes and rifle training and all this. But in August of 43, they told me that I elected, designated, ordered to go to this college training program, which I didn't know anything about. And I said, oh boy, I'm a civilian. This will get me ready for civilian life. Unlike your father, the Navy finished the program. We aborted it for the reason I gave. So then I went up August, went up to CCNY, and then eventually to a unit at Brooklyn College. Then when they shut the program down in March 44, I was sent to an infantry outfit down in Camp Polk, Louisiana. And we came in to Camp Breckenridge in Kentucky in May, and the first week in June we were alerted to go overseas. So we didn't ship them out until the end of the summer. Landed at Wales in England, and we're there for a month for orientation overseas. Then we went over to Southampton, shipped across the channel to Le Havre, and went into northern France on the German.
Did you know at that time, was there an inkling that there was going to be a large invasion?
Well, the invasion was all over. D-Day was all over, see. D-Day was all over. The fighting had been completed in Normandy. the D-Day push into Normandy, and it come to a screeching halt, the American advance in September, because they overextended their lines and supplies weren't available. So they virtually slowed down. The next big crisis that happened was one morning we were up in northern France, and it was just orientation in a combat zone, orientation. But on December 16th, on the morning of December 16th, before 7 o'clock, we routed out of our tents and told to pack up, we're gonna move. We had no idea, it was just confusion. The Army again never bothered to feed us. And we went to a place, I guess near Reims, and gotten 40 and 8s. That's the French rail cars that can take 40 men or 8 horses. Well, the 40 men in America are much larger than they had. 40 men couldn't lay down in those cars. They just couldn't. With the equipment, it's just crowded. But we didn't know what was going on. So moved out the morning of the 16th of December. Didn't know that the bulge had started, that they'd broken through. We got about two and a half days. We ended up came to a halt outside of Liège. They put us in 6x6 trucks, and we started going someplace. We didn't know where. The first recollection I knew they were in trouble. We're going through really a medieval town in the Ardennes, Huy, H-U-Y. And I remember we had to get out of trucks. It's really, the village was one road, one lane. We had to get off the trucks, or move them to the side, slow down, get to the side. And the British lorries and Bren gun carriers were coming through. And I had to let them. I remember sticking our head out. What's going on? And an Englishman, the whole bloody front has broken through. And that was the first idea that we're going into trouble. So the 18th, we were on the northern edge of the bulge. The 19th, we started patrols. Now, we were the first of 9 battalions to get into the bulge from our division. The first 10 days from December 18th to December 28th, we were assigned as riflemen to the 2nd Armored Division. They didn't have their infantry with them because of moving. So we were with them. We rejoined the division. The whole division was in place on the 28th of December. And we started patrols and minor actions in the bulge. We're making progress. The bulge was the biggest battle the United States Army ever fought. It consisted of 24 infantry divisions and 10 armored divisions, so about 600,000 men, and the Germans had about a little slightly less. The snow come in either the 21st or the 22nd of December, and that really caused problems, as you can see from those pictures. And we were out in that snow the entire time. We lost a lot of men with frozen feet, trench foot or whatever, but they're really frozen feet.
Had you been fed yet?
Fed, fed. No, in moving across the Ardennes at various times, we didn't get fed, but I managed to learn early December or after the 21st, if there was an artillery outfit near, I'd go see them and I'd get fed. We had what we call K rations and C rations. And we would dine for anything hot. And you didn't have it there. The K rations were food, but they're very bland, packaged. C rations were better. And during the day, there were burnt out villages, and you could have a fire because the burning. You used to take the C rations, puncture them with your bayonet, throw them in the fire, and of course they were hot as a brick. They're frozen, and they would, when they bubbled, and they were good. They were hot, but Christmas Day they tried to give us. We were on outposts. They tried to give us food, bring up food from our mobile kitchens, but they had to take a road. And we were irritated. We know this because we were irritated. The road was subjected to artillery fire from the Germans, so the company commander wouldn't do it. And of course, we had choice thoughts for him, Why the hell couldn't he run jeeps up, over the road and take it? But he didn't. So, but we kept pushing. Then the thing turned around. We get in a heavy action on the 15th because everybody was pushing to straighten out the bows, make it collapse, get back to where they.
Now, was this in January?
It's in January. January on that, January 15th. We were at Grand Hello. They had a mission to do. We had two platoons pushing to go across the field into a wooden area, and I was a first scout for basically the platoon. I was out front about 50 yards. There's a field in depth about 300 yards. There was the two platoons were out in skirmish formation, advance across this field. I was out about 50 yards, and I came across a first part of the field into a dirt road, an embankment, 3 feet high, and standing in front of that embankment. I didn't know it was a German soldier at the time, but he was there in a white uniform. You look at that picture, the Germans were very prepared for the breakthrough in the Ardennes because they all had winter uniforms. They're over their regular uniforms. They had sewn white canvas, and he was standing there. And I shouted at him, and he answered me in German. And he said, they're going to surrender. Mm-hmm. There were 9 of them there. They were out a picket, really, outside front. There were 9 of them there. So I told him to come down and not to have any fear, and he wouldn't be hurt. So 2 were shot. 2 refused to give up. They refused. They were shot. The other 7, I started back, taking the prisoners back to the rest of the line, turn them over to somebody. Well, the curiosity slowed everything down, with the rest of them moving. And I am waiting for somebody to take I was very happy to take the prisoners back to Paris Look good. Oh, back to Liège. But the company commander come up and said, he started yelling, "Get them moving." I said, "What about the prisoners?" And he said something. So I waited. Somebody took the prisoners, but the rest of the two platoons had moved out, and they got up. Well, they got up over the bank and halfway through the field, and the entire edge of the woods was automatic weapons. We got a lot of casualties. I was about, and again, you wonder why these things happen. I was probably 5 minutes delayed at getting where I should have been. Catching up. I had to catch up. My second scout, Jack Gorse, got killed. I got up midway through and hit the ground. I had a sergeant and a company runner next to me, and wait and see. You couldn't move forward, waiting to see what happened. They sent a Sherman tank to help us. I was about 15 yards away from that. Sent a Sherman tank, and the field was mined and it blew a track. And I never saw anybody come out of a tank so quickly. They rolled down the side of the tank, and the tankers got out of there, but the tank was crippled. I often wondered why they didn't stay there and give us cover. They should have been able to use their machine guns in the tank. I didn't know enough about a tank to do it, but I often wondered why they couldn't have helped it. They got out of there. The tank was there. I was pinned down. I had a sergeant and company runner with me, and I said, he asked me, "What are you going to do, Fair?" I said, "Let's stay here. Can't, lay down, keep down." But there was a sniper anytime you moved. And why did we move? Our feet were freezing. Periodically, we'd kick our feet. That drew attention. The point is that I'd laid my rifle on a wire out of the snow near a post. Eventually, this guy, whoever he was, split the post and knocked my rifle in the snow. And I picked it up out of the snow to put back on the wire. And I must have tilted my helmet and went to straighten my helmet, and he got me on the hand. So I was wounded. I stayed there for a while, and I went back, and I had some problems with a sergeant from weapons company to try to have him use mortars. And Sergeant Lupke, and he said, "You won't go that far." And of course that was a lie. Mortars could go 3,000 yards, and we were only looking at 300 yards. But I was happy that a Red Cross medic came by in a Jeep and said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I got hit in the hand." He took me down to Battalion 8 Station. So I was evacuated. Evacuated back to Liège, put in a train into Paris.
Did you ever hear what happened to the rest of your...
Yeah, very much so. But that day we lost 32 killed and 31 wounded. It was very bad.
Along that line?
That's very badly handled. And I was in the 2nd platoon, and virtually all the 2nd platoon that I came to the States were wiped out, either killed or killed or wounded. It was very badly handled, from my point of view, but the general didn't ask me myself. I'd like to make one comment. The American Army does a terrific job of training people. You know, they took farmers and made all kind of special art. They did a marvelous job. The one job they didn't do well, and I don't know what the reason is. The only job that an infantryman has to learn the job, on-the-job training. He has to learn on the job. There's nothing, you know, and through exercises, field problems, the whole bit. And they really didn't help. And you learn, as I always thought, an infantryman learns it in combat.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's lucky, he learns and survives. But we were very poorly trained for some reason. I wondered how other people did. I went to, as a week in Paris in the hospital. The hand was infected, and they shipped me up to Normandy to a general hospital up there. I had surgery. I was there 10 days, a week, and that was good duty because there was, for a week we were fed at our bed, and then we had ambulatory to go to the mess hall, but we were fed. But anyway, I got back to the unit up in Holland, late February, no later than March. From there we went in trucks, went into Germany. We went down on the Rhine, I think about 15th of March, and we waited there until the engineers and the Navy took us across the Rhine.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it was a joke. It's farmland, that area. And we were shelled. That's where I got hit the second time. The Germans would shell, periodically shell. I got a piece of shrapnel on my chin in a house we were in. But it was very flat land, farmland, very good land. And we were there. But the point I made, waiting, everybody was trying to get as many people across the Rhine as you could. They started earlier. But what was my thought? I lost my thought.
You're talking about the Navy.
Where they did we'd see the Navy come down with their ducks, and they'd mark U.S. Navy, and they were in their denims and their white hats, and of course we were standing there, nondescript, dirty old riflemen, and we'd say, "Hey, you guys are lost. Do you know where you're going?" And we really, of course, but they were good-natured and all that. It was good-natured. But I remember they were a sight.
Mm-hmm.
So then we went through the Ruhr, the various. I remember Bochum. I remember Dortmund and other towns. The weather was good. At the end of the day, we were living in houses instead of in the field because you get in these small villages, threw the Germans out and used that overnight, so that was good. And the other thing that really helps your morale, casualties were light. We were getting very few casualties. So we ended up down in Westphalia, on the edge of southern Germany, and we ended up there for the first week in May, the end of the war, which was for us was May 7th.
Mm-hmm.
We knew the Germans were in there in range, and for us it was May 7th. We stayed and occupied that village of 1,100 people for about a month. Then we.
Did the Germans citizens react to the?
They're very good. They're very good. Uh, uh, that was probably again, outside of ASTP, probably the best month I had in the Army. I was the only one in the platoon that spoke any German. So the lieutenant, he was a replacement lieutenant, our first one got killed. He just turned the whole thing over to me. And the thing we were doing is just stopping any traffic from moving. And that was our request from the Germans coming in. I want to go see so-and-so. And so, no, no pass, you can't move. The other thing, sergeant put out roadblocks to stop people from moving. And then if they picked up Germans, they brought them to me in the CP, and I asked for papers. Well, the Third Army to our south was discharging Germans very quickly, and they had the Ausweis and Laschenschein discharge papers, and along that we'd let them go. So that was then I'd get proclamations from the Allied military government, and I'd go see the Burgermeister. There were two families there, Reinhard Otto and Gustav Otto. Reinhard Otto was the mayor, the Burgermeister, and we had taken off, he was a businessman, Gustav Otto's house for our CP. We lived there. That was good duty. But someplace an officer come by, and I'd go up every noontime to confer with the Burgermeister. I'd give him what had to be done. I had two great proclamations they sent through from the Allied military government, and they had to be posted someplace. And he had to do it, and I had to see it done. They posted it, I don't know, something, a kiosk in the square. But then some officer come by, and I don't know who he was, but he said, "You don't go up there, you have him come to you." You know, the little ethnic thing. Well, that was all right. And he came down to see me each day. But we had the requests for, the German, you asked the question, the German citizens, I think it was quite good. We never had any trouble with them. We had to get one of the things they asked from down in the city was how many people belong to the Nazi Party, and it asked the Burgermeister, and he gave me some names. But we had a fella, man, I don't know, he'd come in, and he'd come in to pick up the cigarettes, burnt cigarettes, and talk to him. Well, he gave me additional names, you know, see, so we gave him that. But they asked about racing cards and all that. But that was interesting. The people, I remember one thing. People underneath are all the same. We heard the rumor we're going to move out, and Mrs. Otto came to me. It was in her, and she'd come in periodically to get things out of the house. She'd live on other members' house, and she says, "You're leaving?" And I said, "Yeah, sometime soon." And she says, "Oh, that's not good." And I'm amazed. What's not good? She says, "Your battle troops, they're gonna send in non-battle troops." In fact, she said blacks, and they're terrified. I told her, "No, they're not going to occupy this, it's too small." But the thought that, really, battle troops don't mistreat the civilians. those that come after, because they've seen enough of it. But I thought her reaction, I never forgot her reaction. So then we were back into France, and they broke up. They kept the unit, but they used them to be cadre for the redeployment camps. They had redeployment camps all over France. The troops coming out were processed to go home, and the replacements coming in, going into Germany, came through that. So we got various jobs. I was at Camp Baltimore, and shortly after I got there, I got a request from the company day room, company command post. They want to see you up to post headquarters, see some colonel. I said, what the hell is this about? You know, they don't tell you anything. It's the worst thing in the army. Rumors, if you've got a good rumor, you could be king. But anyway, I went up there, and there was a full colonel from the quartermaster corps, and he asked me, how would you like to set up the camp quartermaster camp, which would supply all the needs for the troops, fill out their needs, these going home and all that. So I said, oh, that's fine. He says, I can't give you the rank this deserves, but I will make life as comfortable as I can for you. And he said, and what they'd done was convert an old French cavalry post as the quartermaster outfit on the edge of camp. So I said, fine. So I was put on detached service down there. There were a total of 17 of us, including 4 officers. And I had ended up with having 12 German prisoners, a German lieutenant as a straw boss, and 3 GIs, and we filled requisitions for the people in camp with all the clothes they needed in auxiliary. So I stayed there until December 1945, and I was sent home and came into Camp Kilmer, and was discharged sometime in January. So I spent 3 years in the Army, 14 months overseas in Europe, of which a little less than 7 months was in combat.
I know behind you there's a box that has all your different medals and citations, most notably the Purple Heart. But what are some of the medals we're looking at there? Well,
the one on the left, the Bronze Star, and then I got the Purple Heart with a cluster, oak leaf cluster. One was for being wounded on January 15th in the Ardennes. The other one was the 18th of March in Germany. Shell came in a house, and I got it. The other one is never getting caught doing anything wrong, meritorious service. I call it the Good Conduct Ribbon. It's the Good Conduct Ribbon. In
So that's
Army nomenclature is the Meritorious Service Medal. But you never get caught doing that. Then there's the American Defense, and there's the Victory Medal for World War II, and then there's the ETO medal, served in the ETO. It's got 3 bronze stars on it. One is for the Ardennes, one is for the Ruhr campaign, and the other Central Germany. The bottom ones are medals that were issued in 1955 by the French government. The one on the left is having served in combat in France, and that combat was in Alsace-Lorraine. The battalion served there the division served there. I was in the hospital. Then, no, that's French liberation. The cross is combat. The other two are awarded by the Belgian government for having served in combat in Belgium and having having the victory medal for Belgium. Then there's the combat infantry badge that is awarded to infantrymen. Their citation reads, engaged in constant small arms fire with the enemy. That's the qualification for that. I shot expert with the carbine. I shot sharpshooter with the M1, and I shot marksman by design with the VAR, the automatic rifle.
That's the Browning, right?
The Browning, yeah.
Those were heavy to carry, weren't they?
Well, first of all, I was a rifleman, and you gave the BAR always to the big guys. You look for 6 feet, 180, 200 pounds, and he was a VAR man. I weighed 135 pounds. I never should be. This is one of the times I outsmarted myself. When you went out in the range, and I'd been out there before, if you shot expert, that was over 190 points. The word in the company, and it was true, that you had to go out again to qualify as a sharpshooter with the 03. And I saw one of my buddies, who's a football player, a high school football player in Pittsburgh. He was 180, 190 pounds. And he had to go out with the 03. And he'd come in and he'd have to go out the next day and he'd put what do you call them? Towels around his army. I saw some of them that had black eyes from the kick. And I said, this isn't for me. And you didn't want to go to the range anyway, because you'd probably shoot 2 warnings, but you'd go out for the week and be out there at daybreak. So anyway, when you're shooting for score, you'd have you, and then you'd have your instructor beside you, the next guy to shoot, and he'd tell you how you're shooting. So I just made sure I never shot expert. I shot the next round sharpshooter, under 190 points. But somehow, I got the orders, hey, you got to go out there and qualify with a VAR. So I went out there, and then I said, oh Christ, I don't want to be good on this. I have to qualify, because with the Army, they keep sending you back. So I just got over the 150 points score, and just barely I qualified. But yeah, that was 27 pounds, and you had to carry 4 magazines with 20 shells each in it, and then you had and with marching the rifle got heavy enough, but that was after. So, but I think I was the only one in the company that was a rifleman that qualified for the VA, other than the VAR man. Yeah.
Now, when you were over in Europe, were you able to keep in touch with family back home?
Oh, sure. Well, we're nothing like they have today. You know, you see them in Iran and Afghanistan, and they got their cell phones. And I'll tell you a little story about that. Cell phones, and they've got their email. We had what we called we had a special letter. I forgot to say, but we wrote as much as you could, and you'd get a break, you'd write, and you'd give them to the mailman in the company, and when he had a chance, he'd send them out. And you'd get them, now when I got back, interesting thing, when I got back to the outfit in the end of February up in Holland, I was told by the mailman, "Hey, Faye, I got your mail for you." And of course, I also had about 8 months' pay coming. I never was paid, but anyway, he gave me all the mail he collected and boxes, and it was all marked deceased. It was all marked deceased, yeah, and he just hadn't got rid of it. But yes, we did get letters from home. Unbelievable.
Now, when you were on, anytime you did get Liberty, did you get a chance to see it? Not really.
No. They just refitting in a break or something. No. You never get off. You never get out of the zone. No. Now, after the war, after the war was over and we got back in Germany, they started giving passes to people to go to Switzerland, to go to Paris and that. I never got one of those. Although when I got with the outfit back in France and was with that detached service with that quartermaster, every weekend the colonel, we were really working a 5-day week. We had our own Jeep and could go to Paris. And every weekend I went to Paris.
What was that like?
Oh, it was great. I saw all the sights. We stayed at Army billets, and they had food for us. You go in there, you're fed. There wasn't too much food you could buy, in Paris and that. But no, the weather was good. It was good. It was good, yeah.
So, once you were back in the States, what was it like reacclimating yourself to being stateside and being a civilian again?
Well, that's what most of our training was. It was easy to do. We really no problems. And unlike those that come back from Vietnam and come back from Iraq, we settled in very quickly. In fact, I think in January, I took a month off, and I think the end of January, early part of February, I started back to school.
Was that a continuation of
Yeah.
CCSU?
Well, Latin, I had a year at Northeastern before I went in the Army. Yeah.
Did you finish up at Northeastern?
Yeah, I finished.
Was that on the GI Bill?
Yeah.
So
Used every bit of it. I got finished my undergraduate and I got an MBA from Northeastern. So that.
And I see a lot of things on the wall. Have you been able to keep in touch with some of the folks that made it back with you over the years?
No, I never joined the reserve, which was fortunate because I would have gone to Korea. And I remember at Fort Devens when we were being processed for discharge, we had a talk by a staff sergeant that you can get out in 24 hours if you sign up for the reserve. And my brother, who was in the Navy, he signed up, and he was called back in the Korean War. I was never called back. I never signed up on that. And now getting this, I never knew about the reunions because I never joined the American Legion or the VFW. I never knew, and they were posted reunions. I went to my first reunion in 1985 because it was down at Valley Forge in Pennsylvania. And we went there because a couple that we knew very, very well and had made contact with for 50 years were coming up from Louisville, Kentucky, and we went to see them. I went to a number of unions. I hosted a battalion union in '88 up to Mystic for them. But now it's there's not too many to go. You know.
So once you were back, you took advantage of the GI Bill. What did you do in terms of your career?
Well, I went to my training was in chemistry. I spent maybe 4 years with General Chemical, which was a division of Allied Chemical and Dye, which no longer exists. And then I went to work as molding room superintendent for Foster Grant and Leominster. And then from there, I went to work for Atlantic Gelatin, General Foods in Woburn. And I was there 57 to 64, 7 years. And I was in operations and quality control, process control. And the last 2 years I was there, I was technical director for gelatin in sales. And then I went down to White Plains. So I spent 30 years with General Foods, 22 years at White Plains, and retired from there in '86.
You moved up here to Madison when you retired.
Yeah. Well, I lived in Stamford, and all the children. I had 6 children. I had 10 grandchildren. We just celebrated our 65th wedding anniversary a couple of weeks ago, and we had 31 members of my immediate family there. So I've caused the potential for causing a lot of trouble. But they're good and we keep. So that's pretty much. It was. I think it was a unique experience. It's one having gone through. It has to mark one of the most unique experience a human being can ever go through, being in combat, being in the infantry. And of course, I'll end up with saying the infantry win the wars. We're the main bout, everything else is to support us.
Well, like the naval guys in the duck boats, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything else that...
No, anything else? Yeah.
No, it was perfect.
Yeah, okay.
I appreciate you letting us do this, and on behalf of Tim and myself, thank you very much.
Yeah, wow, it's a good project. It's a good project. It'll be a history, and God, it's needed. Mm-hmm. It's not needed to glorify war. Right. It's needed to see how we come through these things, how we handle them, and all that. And we don't teach it in the schools. We don't teach it. I'm very, very happy with what the Brantford high school system tried to do. But the only thing they know about that period, and all 3 classes that sat in with us, or we sat in with them, is the only thing they know that period that they got in school as an assignment is the Holocaust. The rest of it, not even a good job of why the background for the Holocaust, because they couldn't allow that much time for it.
Well, hopefully this project and the speakers bureau that we're establishing is going to help to change that.
Yeah, well, I hope so. It's needed. You know, we go. I can remember my high school. We had a full year of history 3 times a week. No dilution with social studies, a full history of the United States, and it was the biggest textbook we had.
Well, let's hope that history stays.
Let's got to get back to it.
I think we're all set. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, this is it.